Hello. I don't usually appear on camera, but for some reason I just feel like this video in particular needs to be very straightforward. And also, hey, if people get really mad at me about this whole thing, they'll know what I look like. So if they see me on the street, they can punch me in the face or something. But I'm here to talk about The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, which as a full title is a little awkward, but actually that leads right into the fact that I'm not here to share my own thoughts on the show. I'm not doing a review of the first handful of episodes. I'm not taking sides in the debate that's going on right now, especially online, but instead to discuss the debate itself. And debate is a very kind word for what is, in reality, a typically vicious and aggressive online environment of just, anger and opposition, basically. And for one thing, I'm going to assume that you already have a decent amount of background here on this show. It was already controversial before it started. Amazon has spent an enormous sum on this show while also cutting costs in certain ways. They moved the production from New Zealand to one of the big studios in the UK. I think it was Shepperton or Pinewoods, but don't quite remember. And as for the hardcore fan base, people who are really into Lord of the Rings, Hobbit, the Middle-earth, and the wealth of Tolkien lore that he built up over his lifetime, there was always a definite chance that the show would be received in very mixed ways. Very different opinions are going to sprout up when the show is finally released. And it has. It's not finished yet, obviously, but it doesn't matter. We're not going to wait that long. Nobody's going to wait that long to share their opinions. It's been interesting. And by interesting, it's kind of been so far. And I want to talk about that. Now, again, not taking sides. I'm not agreeing with one side or the other. Also, I'm not the biggest Tolkien/LOTR fan. I grew up really into Lord of the Rings. The Peter Jackson movies were coming out at the time. I was reading through all the stuff. I read some of the supplemental Tolkien stories. I think Lost Road and Other Writings was a big one. Thanks. Yep. Go ahead. Yeah, thank you. Yes. Yeah, sure, man. You look super cool. This guy's trying to look like an outlaw. But I've seen his house. He's got tons of money. Anyway, and I've only been following this whole thing mostly through a couple of online portals, specifically a little bit of YouTube. I'll talk about the YouTube response to the show a little bit later on. And then a specific subreddit called LOTR Memes, which is just a thing that I casually browse through. It's a decent community. It's a pretty big community. And it has been a great way to observe the trajectory of this whole situation. I'm going to talk about a little bit of what's been going on, and surprisingly, this all ends on a somewhat positive note. There is a tiny little super thin silver lining to the whole situation that I want to bring up because I think it's important for our understanding of online communities and online discourse and arguments and harassment, etc. So that's where we're going to end up. But to get there, first we're going to talk about some of just the general negativity and the stuff that's been going on in the wake of this show's release. So let's get started. Okay, so in most ways, the online response to the show has been extremely predictable. Like, there's basically nothing about the reaction to the show that has surprised me in any way. And many other people feel similarly about it, where it's just been a schism. Is that how it's pronounced? A schism in the community, especially people who are really dedicated to this stuff. Among general audiences, I think the response has been much more mellow, but for the hardcores, it's a lot of people taking a very hard side, either really aggressively criticizing the show and specifics of the show and the overall concept and execution. And then there are people who are very staunchly trying to support the show. And then, of course, though we don't tend to talk about them a lot, there are many, many people in the middle who aren't really heavily on one side or the other. I will be talking about them today. But first of all, yeah, it's what you would expect at this point. We've seen it so many times. with so many other properties where, I don't know, it's almost an interesting side effect of Hollywood's over-reliance on like reboots and remakes of existing properties that have name recognition, is that if you have a dedicated fan base, it's basically guaranteed at this point that they're going to be split over any adaptation. No matter what you do with it, there's going to be a split. And in this case, yep, exactly that happened. It happened once again, where you just have people yelling at each other through any social media, any place where there is room for interaction. It's just a thing. Again, not surprising one bit. In fact, I would even call it a very dull and uninteresting reaction in many ways. Probably the worst aspect that we could discuss here, the most negative of the negative reactions, is that yes, indeed, there has been really vicious harassment of people associated with the show, especially people of color or women associated with the show. I don't think I need to explain to you why that's stupid and bad and regressive and just completely baseless. But yeah, that has been happening. I want to acknowledge that. It's awful. And the idea that just anybody in any job, if you're online and people have access to you in some way, you're just subject to this. Like, you just don't have a choice. Performers, they have to have social media stuff. They have to put themselves out there. That's the whole job. And it doesn't matter. Like, just depending on who you happen to be and the projects you happen to be involved in, people might just come down on you and attempt to like harass you out of your entire job or worse. It's disgusting, but I don't think I need to linger on this for too long, because in addition to that, which is just based in absolutely nothing, we have people who are just like more typical internet argument stuff where they'll have their list of reasons why this particular thing is really good or why this particular thing is really bad, and they will try to hash out specifics of their argument in various online venues. I don't want to talk too much about the specific arguments that both sides are making. They're fine. Some of them are reasonable arguments. Some of them are about devaluing the opinions of others, which is never a very good approach. I would even say that it is a very bad way to argue in general. But again, it's nothing new. It's nothing new. And this brings us to the potential positive in all of this, which is that I'm seeing more and more people, especially people on that subreddit I mentioned earlier, who are just tired. They're in the middle. They don't have, especially strong feelings about the show one way or the other, or they just want to watch it in peace, or they don't want to rush online and talk about the show with other people. Like, they just want to be a person, watch their media, and then talk about other things on the internet. There are a lot of these people. And especially on that subreddit, I'm seeing so many posts that just express exactly that. It's just people saying, please stop, basically, or I'm tired of this. Like, I don't see the value in arguing over this, or like, they just acknowledge the fact that the community itself seems to just be breaking down. And even though we all knew this was coming, it doesn't make it less difficult. It doesn't make it less unpleasant or undesirable. Like, it's it's just kind of sad. And the fact that we are seeing more people being tired of the whole situation, this might sound strange, but that's what's giving me hope right now. That's what's giving me a little twinge of potential positivity, because it might mean that it's possible for internet discourse to develop and elevate over time. Like, this might mean that there is a future in which we don't have to deal with this every single time a new show/movie comes out. There's a potential reality where fan bases collectively are able to process this stuff in a mature fashion and in a way that doesn't get them attacking people, literally or figuratively, at least in terms of my personal experience with this kind of online discourse and arguing and everything. This might be the very first time I've seen that. I don't know. Prior to this, I just see, oh, there's going to be an argument every single time, and it's going to be really malicious and aggressive and terrible. And I just assumed that would repeat forever. But I think now it might be a thing. It might be a thing where the internet as a whole somehow is starting to grow up. Maybe I'm being a little bit too hopeful here. I am going to hope, at the very least, that this is a growing trend, that more and more people will start to be unsatisfied with this norm and that more people just get tired of it. Because when a lot of people are tired of a situation or a dynamic, power dynamic, whatever, that's the first step to overcoming that situation. That's the first step to a bad thing dying off. And especially in the case of just online toxicity and hatefulness and all that kind of stuff. One of the best things you can do to oppose it is just not engage. Like it's just a wildfire, as we have so many of here in California. It's just a fire. Whatever you throw on it, it just gets bigger, and it just keeps happening. And as I touched on earlier, I think the internet loves extremes. It loves drama, even if the reality of a situation isn't that dramatic at all. And this is where I'm going to take a very brief moment to criticize not that subreddit I was talking about, because to be honest, the vast majority of people seem very reasonable. Most people are not going to extremes to just hate on the thing or hate on people they disagree with. Most people are just stating their opinions, even if they have a strong opinion. They're not being insane about it. They're just making their point, and that's it. A conversation picks up from there. Very impressed with that subreddit, honestly. As opposed to what I've seen over here on YouTube. I'm pointing to YouTube right now. Because what I've seen on YouTube so far is the worst of the worst. Over here on YouTube, we just have the same kind of channels that exaggerate absolutely everything. And for them, everything is extreme. Everything is about, oh, these people are crazy. I hate these other people. These actors hate the fans. We talk to supporters. Oh, they're so stupid. And they yell and they come up with the worst thumbnails. I'm not going to name them, and I'm not going to show thumbnails because I don't want to promote their work in any way. They are contributing directly to the problem. Even if they are not specifically encouraging people to go on hate campaigns and to harass people associated with the show, they are riling people up for their own financial profit in a lot of situations. And what other people do then can potentially be extremely negative. It's no good. I don't like it. And again, it's another thing where I'm just really tired of it. I'm just really tired of people making entire careers out of just acting like they're the only person on earth who's sensible and guided by reason, when in reality, no, it's all pure emotion. It's all about getting other people extremely emotionally invested in a situation. And a lot of these types of creators don't seem to accept the fact that they can be contributing to some extremely negative effects. I guess they just don't care, or they're not considering that angle at all. Not a fan. And again, compared to what the average person is posting online about all this, I don't think it's common either. I think most people are reasonable. I think most people accept that it's just a show. It's just a piece of entertainment that you like or you don't like. The world will keep spinning. Other things will happen. Our lives will go on. If you look to certain areas like Twitter or YouTube specifically, you would get a completely different impression. You get this impression that everybody is united on either side and that it's just the most important battle that can possibly be won. And that's just not true. Here's hoping that a lot of people are in reality just seeing this as what it is, and that if they do have disagreements about the show, that they just say them and move on with their lives. You can engage in arguments, obviously. You can engage in discussion, but also there are definitely limits. And I think most of us agree that there are lines that should not be crossed, and that you should not be yelling slurs at people, that you should not be harassing people, doxing people, etc. That's it. That is the low, low bar that we have to meet, and I think we're actually pretty close. But in the meantime, it's just, I don't know. It's so disappointing to see the people who are lagging behind, who still think that it's like a worthy cause to just scream their opinions as if they're the most important thing in the world. So, got a little riled up there. Can you see now why it was maybe a bad idea to put my face on the screen? But honestly, that's most of what I wanted to share today. I do see hope. I do see light at the end of the tunnel, not just for this community in particular, but for a potential future of all online discourse where we're better at it, where we're not trying to ruin people's lives over an entertainment property. When people do get that angry about an entertainment property, it's not actually about the entertainment. It's not actually about a piece of media. That's anger coming from a very different place, and it's just trying to find an outlet. I'm so tired of talking, and I'm even more tired of being on camera. So I just want to say thank you so much for joining me for the whole video. I hope that I haven't made anyone extremely angry at me, but feels like a roll of the dice at this point. Anyway, feel free to share your comments. I probably won't read them this time around, but yeah, keep it nice and civil, obviously. And if you don't care about Lord of the Rings at all, how you doing? How's your day been so far? This is like my one kind of hip shirt, because I think it's supposed to be like Keith Haring stuff, but I'm not really a big fan of Keith Haring at all. Like, I think he's fine. It's kind of underwhelming, I think, in a lot of cases, but thanks for stopping by.